Hello cowboys! This month we have some nice experience bonuses, and ETTA DOYLE glitch still works. This video will help you level up the role of bounty hunters faster. Also I will explain why you get different rewards for completing missions, and at the end as always some useful advice. Let's start. We go to the bounty hunters board and choose legendary bounties by pressing the triangle on PS. Next we choose ETTA DOYLE. So from that moment the mission began. As you can see, I installed a time code. It will help us in explaining some moments of the mission. The first thing we do is run forward and go into the storage. Go down a little and stop. Our task is to take the lasso and not shoot. This is important. Carefully follow the dialogue of the offenders, and when they say that they need to get out of here, it will be a signal for us to run out of the ambush. Listen carefully that the phrase we need sounds at the 4 minutes and 10 seconds. As soon as we hear it, we immediately run out, go forward and little to the left. We pay attention to the minimap, see that it is definitely Doyle, throw a lasso at it and hog tie. The main thing is not to shoot or hit with hands or feet. If you only use the lasso, no one will attack you. Then we call the horse, start Doyle and go to the custody. Do not hand it in immediately upon arrival. The longer you are in the mission, the more gold, money and experience you will get. Those who have a bounty wagon call it, throw Doyle in there and wait. You can open a catalog that did not kick you out of the game for inactivity. Those who do not have a wagon, just wait and keep here. If you have an improved lasso, the offender will be tied for 8 minutes. A simple lasso will be only able to hold here for 2 minutes. Now talk about rewards. You will receive the maximum payout if you surrender here after the 30 minutes. So I waited 30 minutes and go to the hand over the offender.
They'll see justice. Well done. There's your body. You sure won it.
And here is the result. Today the reward is double. Usually you will get 1500 experience. Now some advice from me. If you miss Doyle, it's okay. Calmly catch up with her. Don't use weapons, only the lasso. You will be able to get her even after she got into the carriage. Throw the lasso and drag her to the territory of the warehouse. thanks to everyone who watching my channel. Come on, as always, you comment, subscribe and like. And I'm happy to make a new content for you. That's all for now. So see you in the next video.